Hi, and thanks for joining me today for our presentation on GIFT, Guided Independent Flight Training. My name is Harvey Madison. I'm the instructional designer for Redbird Flight Simulations. Today we're going to have an overview, I'm going to give you a quick update, and then we're going to talk about how to integrate GIFT into your flight curriculum for your flight school. So, our overview is for folks new to GIFT. There are probably a few of you out there who haven't heard about GIFT, or at least if you have heard about it, don't know that much about it yet and are here to learn. In the update, we actually have a pretty big announcement today. So look forward to giving you that information. And then finally, with the integration piece, we're really teaching you how to maximize this very powerful tool to help everybody involved in flight training. So on this slide, I promise it's the only slide I'm going to read verbatim. GIFT stands for Guided Independent Flight Training. And in a nutshell, GIFT PPL, Private Pilot License, and GIFT IR, Instrument Rating, provide in-simulator flight instruction with real-time coaching, as if an instructor is sitting in the right seat talking the student through each maneuver. If the student deviates during the maneuver, the virtual CFI instantly tells them what's wrong and how to correct it. At the end of each flight, the student receives detailed scores based on ACS standards. So, guided independent flight training provides a whole bunch of benefits for the CFI and for the student flying. It's automated, which means that a pilot can learn on their own, or rather a student pilot can learn on their own. It's thorough. It covers maneuvers needed for certification or rating. It's smart. In fact, it's smart enough to coach in real time. It's accurate. The scores that are given are per the ACS, making the data very useful. And it's objective. It scores the same way every time, unlike a human being sometimes who's moody or has different perceptions on different days about student performance. We have two different versions of guided independent flight training. We have PPL, private pilot, and then we have IR, instrument rating. So once you've gotten your private pilot certificate and you want to become instrument rated, you can continue using GIFT. You can use the IR version of GIFT to pursue your instrument rating. GIFT skills transfer to a real airplane, and we've already seen this with many, many students who have used GIFT, which has been out for several years now. Training time and costs decrease for students who use GIFT. The modules can be learned and practiced any time that there is an available Redbird to run GIFT on. And it's pretty important to note also, not only does it add value, but it adds enjoyment to training and proficiency. GIFT was developed by education and training professionals, CFIIs, student pilots, and pilots. We didn't just have one person decide that this was a good idea and all of their ideas went into it. A whole bunch of professionals from both education and from aviation had a hand in making sure that GIFT is what it is today. And it utilizes features that only a simulator can provide. There are visual markers in the sky and on the ground when it makes sense to have them. It interacts with the pilot, but only as required. So if a pilot is deviating, for example, that's when the virtual CFI's voice will pipe up and it'll tell the student what's going wrong and how to fix it. It has automatic safety and best practice protocols, so if a student decides that they want to horse around in there, GIFT isn't really going to let them do that. It's going to keep them on task and learning what they need to be learning, and a whole lot more beyond that. So really, that makes GIFT the best and most effective practical training software on the market today. And GIFT solves a lot of problems. Many of the same problems that simply having a simulator solves. Overbooked CFIs, overbooked airplanes, matching schedules between a student and instructor, nervous students. That is a really good point. As a matter of fact, there are Many students who want to learn how to fly, but once they get into the airplane, they're pretty nervous about what's going on and the forces that they're feeling when they're inside the airplane. They're afraid they're going to do something wrong or that the airplane is going to fall apart. Well, if you get them started in a simulator, if you get them started with GIFT and learn how to do a basic maneuver, then have them replicate that in the real airplane, they're going to not quit, which is really important. So you're going to retain that student, and they're going to have a lot of confidence moving on to the next step. The cost of practice to mastery and staying proficient is dramatically reduced, and the time to get the private pilot certificate and instrument rating is reduced as well. And again, that last part, it increases student retention. I mentioned that before with regard to nervous students. We also have customer success training for flight schools that you can give us a call and ask us about that will help not just using GIFT, but with many aspects of your simulator. We can teach you how to maximize the use of your simulator to increase student success, increase the flight school success at the same time. So there are a couple of things GIFT isn't. GIFT is not a replacement for a real CFI. We're just not that good with artificial intelligence yet, and I think that's still a long ways off. And GIFT also is not loggable instruction. The virtual CFI is not a real certificated CFI, obviously. So a student can, according to FAA rules, in an AATD, log 2.5 hours toward their private pilot's license with a real human CFI riding shotgun with them. And they can log 10 to 20 hours, depending on the circumstances, toward an instrument rating. And if you have questions about that, give us a call. Our contact information will be at the end of this presentation, and we'll give you more information about it. And now we have a video that you can use for marketing purposes for GIFT. Let's take a look. So that's our marketing video. Before we dive into more details, let's hear the big announcement. I am extremely pleased to announce that we are, as of now, releasing GIFT Private Pilot version 2. GIFT PPL V2, as we've been calling it internally here at Redbird, is newer, better, bigger G, CFI, scoring, and you can use all Redbird aircraft. Let me explain what each of those bullet points means. It's newer. Well, we learned lessons when we were creating version 1, and we took those lessons that we learned and we applied them in version 2. It's better because it incorporates features previously only available in GIFT instrument rating. So the 33 missions that are in GIFT version 1, Private Pilot, have become dozens more variations that you can choose from. And we will look a little more closely at that here in just a few minutes. Bigger G. We made the G in GIFT bigger. What does G stand for? Guided Independent Flight Training. So the guidance is now more thorough and more intuitive. So we opened up the hood and took a look at the dialogue that is played in the simulator, and we improved it. And speaking of that, we now have multiple virtual flight instructors. You will actually hear 3 different voices in GIFT PPL version 2, and one of them is female. We have improved the scoring. The scoring is still accurate and consistent per the ACS, which of course makes the data very useful. But there's a new curve beyond the passing line of 80%. So if you score, say, the first time you fly a maneuver as a student pilot, you're just learning it, you score a 60. Okay, so you improve a little bit, and the next time you fly it, you score a 70. You improve a little bit, next time you score an 80. So there was a certain amount of improvement you had to produce in order to make that jump from 60% to 70% to 80%. Okay, well, in order to get from 80% to 90%, you would think, well, it's going to take the same amount of improvement as it did from 60 to 70 to 80. But no, it takes more improvement for each point up you get from 80% in order to gain that additional percentage point. So in other words, it's kind of logarithmic. As you approach 100%, which should be just about almost unobtainable, it gets progressively harder and harder and harder, and we have found that students really feel challenged by this in a good way. So it makes them feel like they're competing against themselves and they really want to eke out that next percentage point to say that they made it there. All that's doing is making them a much better pilot. So that's why we put that curve in there, and we've gotten very positive response from it so far. All right, so let's take a look at the launch flight menu for PPL V2 now. So taking a look at this, we have selected the landings mission. Now, you may remember, if you're familiar with version 1, that there are several different landings missions. There is normal landing, crosswind landing, short field, and long field, or short field and soft field, rather. Now, there's just one landings mission. But you have a lot of options within that actually gives you a whole bunch of unique missions that you can create just by making different decisions in the launch menu before you start the flight. The first one is, and this is only for folks who are using a J velocity or a regular J, you can select which aircraft type you want to use. Of course, if you're not in a J, whichever acrylic panel you have attached to your Redbird is what is going to determine the aircraft. Next slide. The maneuver type. So for landings, do you want to do a normal landing? Do you want to do a short field landing, or do you want to do a soft field landing? Relevant airspeeds. You can choose which airspeeds you will be graded against by gift. So what speed should you be going on downwind? What speed should you be going on base, on final, on short final? So this is really a shout out to the instructors who have been saying, well, I'd like to be able to vary those speeds and have the student stick to this particular speed rather than the one that was hard-coded into version 1. Well, now it's selectable. And in fact, with that drop-down menu, you'll see that we have increments of 5 knots. You can actually type in any value that you want there in addition to selecting one of those increment of 5 selections there. Moving on to the next slide. Here you can select whether there is wind or not. And in this particular case with landings, it's crosswind. And the cool thing about this is that here, you can do something that you couldn't do in version 1 insofar as you can have a crosswind with a soft field landing, a crosswind with a short field landing. Couldn't do that in version 1. Now you can. And then finally, you can turn the coaching off. In other words, you can kick the virtual CFI out of the airplane and fly this solo. So you won't hear the coaching, you won't hear the corrective coaching, and you'll be able to keep flying this particular mission several times in a row more quickly and without hearing the same thing repeated to you time and time again. And also say you just want your score at the end to be your feedback rather than having the CFI telling you, no, you're drifting to the right, no, you're too low, anything like that. So that is a request that a lot of CFIs have made, and here it is. Now, once you're flying, you can take a look at the dispatch screen and see that all the usual buttons plus an additional one are available to you. You can pause the flight, you can end the flight. If the flight is paused, you can unpause it. You can select the instructor station if you have the instructor station on your simulator. And now you can also attach Corvus. For those of you who don't know, Corvus is our product. It's relatively new that allows you to interface ForeFlight from your iPad into our simulator, and basically it'll be receiving the equivalent of ADS-B information. So with that, let's take a look at how GIFT works. Categorically speaking, you go through 5 steps as a student when you use GIFT. You read a pre-flight briefing. You watch an instructional video that gives you basically the same information as the pre-flight briefing, but also a look at how things are supposed to look out the cockpit window. Then you fly the lesson in the simulator. You debrief, you receive your score and evaluate where improvement is needed, and then repeat. And you want to repeat until you have achieved and can consistently show that you have mastered, that you are passing a particular maneuver in order to go to the real airplane and start doing it there. Okay, step 1, read. This is what you will see. If you go to learning.redbirdflight.com for written and video instruction, you'll see this, and you'll read the briefing. You will watch the video that is down at the bottom of all of the several paragraphs of the pre-flight briefing. Then, of course, you'll fly. Then you'll debrief. So you also go to learning.redbirdflight.com for your debriefing and your scoring history. So you'll see your scoring screen. You will see a map showing your path over the ground. For some missions, that's important. For some, not so much. So for example, for normal landing, as we've shown here, it's pretty much a straight line. And if it's not a straight line, you need to go back and fly it again because it starts you on long final. Anyhow, but also in the upper left there, you see a graph that can provide a tremendous amount of information, such as your airspeed, your MSL and AGL altitudes, your G-forces even, across the entire course of the mission. So now, let's take a look at how you launch GIFT from the menu. So you climb into your simulator, or you sit down in front of your simulator and you launch Navigator. You're going to click the dispatch button, and it's going to ask you for a PIN number once you put your GIFT pilot key, your license key, into the USB port. You enter your PIN, click Submit Code, and then you'll have your menu of all of the GIFT flights available to you. Select one. And in this case, we're taking a look at one of the instrument rating flights. This is ILS approach. And you'll make your various selections here. On this particular menu, this is on an FMX, so there is motion available. So you can select whether or not you want the motion system turned on or not. The entry type, whether there will be a procedure turn or no procedure turn or vectors. And if you want the system to randomly pick one and surprise you, rather than picking entry type, right above that, you would simply select the Surprise Me button. Final approach speed, this is the speed that you want to be graded on, that you maintained down to landing, or down to DA. And then additional options, winds, partial panel failure, circle to land, go missed, or Surprise Me. Again, Surprise Me is at the top of that little group, and one or more of those options will be selected. So now we're going to talk about how to integrate GIFT into your existing curriculum at your flight school, or how to build your own curriculum around GIFT, or any of the above. So we have already integrated our gift into Sporties, into Gleim, JEP, ASA, into our own Redbird, and custom. There are some custom curricula out there in the world that include gift as well, and we will talk about those a little bit. We made gift lessons agnostic as much as we could, so that gift teaches maneuvers without stepping on the toes of any curricular or CFIs who place emphasis more in some areas and less in others. And that was very much intentional. So for example, as I mentioned just now, it's already been integrated into commonly used curricula. Sporties did this integration on their own. We double checked it for them, and it makes perfect sense. And on the next slide, we'll see an example of the Sporties syllabus. So let's drill down into one of Sporties' lessons. The Sporties lesson clearly lists maneuvers to be reviewed. They simply matched up the corresponding gift lessons. And this is a good example of how the modular approach of gift makes it easy to customize for your own unique needs. Moving on, we can take a look at an example syllabus for ASA. All right, this one is their flight lesson 2. The objectives are that the student will review the maneuvers from lesson 1. The instructor will introduce climbing turns, slow flight, power off stalls, et cetera, et cetera. So because we have the names of the gift PPL missions named as clearly as possible, it's usually a no-brainer to figure out which gift missions you need to include. So for example, here in the ASA syllabus, the corresponding gift modules for this lesson are going to be takeoff, straight and level climb, VX climb, changing power and straight and level flight, slow flight, et cetera, et cetera. So very straightforward. Now let's take a look at a Gleim syllabus. The Gleim objective you can see there on the screen. And there are 2 maneuvers in gift which are optional for the Gleim syllabus, and that's stalls, power on, power off. But you're going to want to include emergency approach, rejected takeoff, crosswind landing. Really, you're relying on your own best judgment as a flight instructor to figure out what the right thing is to put here. Also, you can get in touch with us and we will absolutely collaborate with you to help you figure out what is ultimately going to be the best module to include, or set of modules to include. Here's the JEP syllabus, corresponding gift modules. Again, it's just really, really straightforward. And then finally, custom. If you have, like a lot of CFIs out there do, a customized version of a popular curricula. For example, somebody takes the Sporties curricula and they kind of change it over the years to fit better for their teaching style, for their teaching priorities, or you wrote one completely on your own. That's fine. What we recommend is that you simply look at the list of gift lessons and try and match them up with your own syllabus the best you can on your own. That'll probably take you about 10 minutes. Then pick up the phone, give us a call, and you can talk with me directly or any of the rest of the gift team, and we'll give you our opinions as well, and you're free to listen to them or not. So, some CFIs have asked us with regards to gift, when do I introduce a maneuver? Well, first, based on the order in your syllabus. Second, based on the best order for your individual student, so you decide student by student. But in other words, at the same time you would without gift, if you were teaching somebody strictly in the airplane. It really is that easy. One note on the instrument rating version of gift. It's pretty important, we have found, for a student to master a module we have called Patterns A and B before they start jumping into approaches. And if you take a look at our syllabus and at the descriptions of patterns A and B, we think most of you will agree, and you'll certainly see our rationale behind it, whether you agree or not. Next slide. For private pilot, help students get started for most pre-solo lessons. So when you have a student who is pre-solo, they're still really new, they're still learning how to fly the airplane. It's probably a good idea to have a CFI standing behind them or sitting with them the first few times so that they understand all the things that they're supposed to do, both from starting a flight and from actually flying the airplane. And then once they've soloed, in fact, usually before they've soloed even, the students have picked up on what they need to do and are pretty much self-sufficient at that point. So while you're handling another student who up in the real airplane, while you're flying with them, you can have your own independent student down in the simulator flying a gift lesson, being introduced to a new maneuver before they go try it in the real airplane. For instrument, it's definitely more hands-off than private pilot because your students are already pilots, and so they pretty much know what they're doing, or they better. You might want to sit in the right seat for the first few non-approach maneuvers. Again, patterns A and B we really encourage. But mostly they just need to know how to start a flight, how to launch a flight, and if they already used GIFT Private Pilot, they already know. So getting a student to use GIFT instrument is pretty easy. Regardless, sit in the right seat with the student if they score less than 50% their first several times and don't seem to be showing improvement. You need to get your eyes on that student so that you can detect what's going on with them. Now, let's talk about scoring. How do you interpret GIFT scores? Well, again, GIFT scores are based on ACS standards, so hopefully those are already pretty familiar to you. Even the ones that aren't technically quantified in the ACS, you have a pretty good idea what's passing and what's not. In GIFT world, an 80% score is passing. So here's an example, an ILS approach for instrument rating. A GIFT student, GIFT gives a student a passing grade on ILS approach if they don't deflect more than 75% for more than a few seconds, they don't fully deflect at any time, they maintain approach speed reasonably well, they don't bust minimums if applicable, if the ceiling is below minimums, and we make sure that they have tuned to the correct nav and comm frequencies. Okay, so those are the things that would be scored in the ILS approach for GIFT. An example in private pilot, the steep turns, very dynamic maneuver, so a lot of things are measured in steep turns. GIFT will give a student a passing grade if their steep turn is plus or minus 200 feet, plus 10 or minus 5 knots, and the student averages plus or minus 5 degrees of bank during the majority of the turn. Obviously, at the beginning, they have to roll in, and at the end, they have to roll out. We're not scoring during those times. And you know what? I believe there is something missing from that slide that's very important. We also measure what heading they roll out on to make sure that they didn't go over or under 360 degrees. So, very important point. GIFT will always automatically fail or reset to beginning any extreme maneuver or any extreme mistake. Something that would make a CFI go, I have the airplane, GIFT is going to say, whoa, stop, no, we need to start over. So the bottom line is 80% or higher for each sub-element of a flight equals a pass, according to the ACS. But again, the CFI, the human CFI, determines mastery. Gift scores give you several valuable perspectives on your students' current skills and progress over time, because you can look at their trends. You can look at their scores over, say they flew something 10 times. You can see, are they improving? Have they plateaued? Are they all over the place? Anything like that. And all of that information is stored in their account at learning.redbirdflight.com. Very, very cool. Individual elements of a score will identify areas that need to be focused on. So for example, an LNAV approach. The student has moderate deviation from the glide path on a regular basis, but everything else looks good. Well, okay, you know what you need to work on with that student. Now, if it was just the most recent flight that they did that on, but not all the previous flights, maybe they got distracted by something. Ask the student, ask them to show you them flying it again. But if it's the past 5 flights in a row, yeah, they've plateaued, something's up. They need some more instruction from their real CFI. Here are some suggestions as to how a CFI might react to a trend of scores that they see their students generating in gift. And I have them separated by category. First category, normal progress. This is what we usually see. Scoring pattern shows improvement, and then they improve to a certain point and then maintain that certain point. The recommended CFI response, as far as we're concerned, is good job, keep it up. Okay. Now we move on to the next category, the I got this category. This is a student who passed with flying colors the very first time they flew the maneuver, and the second time, and the third time, and they just seem like a natural. They are just nailing it every time. So what do you say to a student like that? Wow, you seem to be a natural. Let's make sure you can still do this a week from now. I want to make sure that this isn't, dumb luck or something like that. And the good news is it's usually not. Usually the student really is that good. And now the next category, the dreaded plateau. You have a student improve to a certain point, and then they just stop improving and they're not passing yet, or they're just barely passing, which isn't good enough. You don't want to put that student in front of a DPE performing the way that they're performing right now. So our recommended response is, let's look at specific elements of your score to see what's wrong, and we'll focus on improving those specific skills or that one specific skill. And we'll also inquire about external factors, the stuff that normal CFIs do, like, are you nervous? Is something going on at work, at home? Is that, did you break your arm and you can't maintain back pressure? Have you heard of a thing called the trim wheel? Things like that. All the usual stuff that CFIs do so well. Next category, something's wrong. You have a student and they score terribly on the first flight. Next flight, they improve a little, but it's still pretty bad. And the third and the fourth, the student just isn't getting it. They are not scoring well at all. They're nowhere close to passing. So that's when the CFI says, hey, I'm gonna sit with you at the simulator. Walk me through the maneuver as if you were teaching it to me. Okay, when the student does that, you're going to go, wow, you're missing this one really important concept. Usually that's what's happening. And it will become apparent very quickly, and you'll be able to say, okay, here's how we need to address that. Here's how we fix that. And then finally, one of my least favorite ones, the multiple personalities. There are so many different things that can cause this. You'll have a student that scores really poorly, and then they get better, and they get worse again. And they get better, and they're passing, and they get worse again. And they get better, and they're passing, and they're improving, and then they fail again. You're like, who are you? I mean, one day you're a good pilot, one day you're a lousy pilot. So what we have found is the best thing to do is first ask the student themselves, why is this happening? Oftentimes they know what's happening. Sometimes it's, well, I guess I probably shouldn't be texting my friends while I'm doing this maneuver, or something silly like that. But if they don't know, go ahead and sit in the right seat with them and say, okay, I want you to fly this maneuver. And if they do it well, ask them to do it again while you're sitting there. And if they end up doing consistently well, they probably know what's wrong and they're not telling you, but that's good enough. That's fine. So when can you use GIFT as a practice tool? Well, let's say your goal is not necessarily get your private pilot certificate, because you already have that, but you need to practice. Well, this is a great way to measure performance. GIFT doesn't know or care if you are a student pilot or if you are a CFII or anything in between. All it knows is how well you flew on the last mission. And it will tell you consistently, objectively, time and time again. So it can tell you how well you do on a single flight, and it can tell you over time, if you fly several times, what your trend is. Are you improving, or are you steady? And if you're steady at a real high score, great, that's fine. It's also good as a tool for reinforcement. So in other words, proficiency. It's really good at proficiency. Speaking of, you can use private pilot and instrument rating for proficiency when you need a knowledge refresher, when you need consistent reinforcement, when you need your performance measured against ACS standards or your own standards. And also, remember, Part 61 currency rule changed a while back, and you can, on your own recognizance, basically, use an AATD or a BATD, both available from Redbird, to maintain your currency without having to go find a CFI. So in summary, what you do with GIFT is you read the pre-brief, watch the video, follow the directions, review your past flights and scores, look for trends, and then, armed with all that knowledge, engage your students. You're going to see retention rates increase. You're going to see graduation rates increase. You're going to see revenue numbers increase. For resources, there's pretty much one place that is absolutely the best place to go, and that is gift.redbirdflight.com. In addition to that, you can also get in touch with us, me in particular, or anybody else on the GIFT team here at Redbird. And again, I'll have our contact information here at the end of the presentation. We're almost done. Another resource that's really important is the instructor's guide. The instructor's guide gives locations, conditions of the airplane, weather, the objective of the module, a detailed narrative of what happens at each step in each flight, and the elements on which the student will be scored. And it does that for every single one of the missions in GIFT Private Pilot and in GIFT Instrument. So as the instructor, you can take a look and see what's going to be scored, what the weather is like, what the conditions are like, what the condition of the airplane is like, how it should be configured, how the cockpit should be configured before it starts, and how it's supposed to go. How do you know when something's gone right or something's gone wrong in it? Very powerful tool. Available at gift.redbirdflight.com. And then if we move on to the next slide, we see the same thing for instrument rating. It just gives you all this information, telling you exactly what's supposed to happen and what could happen, how the scoring is going to happen, et cetera, for each mission in GIFT Instrument. Talking about your syllabus, to kind of bring it back around to where we started this talk about integrating. You've had time to think about it as you've listened to me drone on and on. What fits each syllabus lesson? Which missions fit each syllabus lesson in your syllabus? What makes sense? What do your fellow CFIs think, or the CFIs that work for you if you're the owner-operator? What does management think? You can totally reorder the order of the missions. The order that we have the missions in gift private and gift instrument are not sacred. These are all individual tools in that menu intended to help you. There is basically a pre-solo and post-solo order, but again, nothing sacred about it. Use it the way you know is the best way for you to use it. You can repeat things. You can skip flights. Again, nothing sacred here. And then finally, here's how to get in touch with me. You can get in touch with, or actually first, you can get in touch with Redbird just by emailing info@redbirdflight.com or giving us a call at 512-301-0718. And we're in the Central Time Zone, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., 5 p.m., usual business hours are when you can get in touch with us. And that is also the phone number where you can get in touch with me directly. Also, you can email me directly at hmadison@redbirdflight.com, and I very much look forward to hearing from you with questions, with suggestions, complaints, anything. Just talk to me, and together we can help you make gifts something that really helps your students, helps your CFIs, helps your flight school, and helps build more pilots, because that's really what we're trying to do here. Thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of migration.